In 2013, the Center for Sustainable Shale Development issued performance standards for gas extraction. A number of experts have reviewed these standards for the Delaware Riverkeeper Network and have issued a report saying the guidelines fail to protect the environment and human health. Michelle Adams, a civil engineer specializing in green infrastructure, evaluated the standards.
Well, I think the primary characterization, I would say, is that they're a form of greenwashing. By developing a rating system with a scoring and certification, it's following in the mold of things like LEED, the rating system for buildings that was developed by the U.S. Green Building Council, LEED, Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design, which has specific criteria intended to drive practice in an industry towards greater sustainability. But the criteria in the CSSD standards, many of them were simply reinforcing existing practices or existing trends, or trying to give credit for practices that could never truly be sustainable, that had environmental impacts that really weren't, the technology could not literally overcome the environmental impacts. So it's a form of conveying to the public that you have a sustainable practice or a sustainable industry when the industry is not sustainable, which is the definition of greenwashing, misleading the public. Well, specifically, there's a credit for recycling and reusing the produced water from the fracking practices, and industry is already trending in that direction. So that's hardly something that's worth recognition or credit in a rating system. A rating system should be setting standards high enough to drive an industry or a practice in a more sustainable direction, things the industry wouldn't necessarily strive for on their own. Well, it was very generalized. It wasn't adding specifics to each site. Already the industry is preparing emergency response plans, which are pretty generic for one company across its many well pads or within a given area, not necessarily getting specific with the details at individual sites. And there's nothing in the CSSD criteria that would encourage the industry to provide more information on a site basis, on a watershed basis, specific to the conditions that should be addressed when an emergency occurs. Again, it was giving a point for something that the industry is pretty much already doing under existing state regulations. Definitely inadequate and definitely not sustainable or increasing the sustainability of the industry. Simply disclosing what's in the fracking materials, while that's helpful, is not the same as a regulation on what you can and can't use and what its impacts might be on the environment as you're using it. There's no standards for its use. They would simply recommend disclosing it, which may or may not be of information to the general public. It certainly doesn't, simply disclosing that you're using a toxic chemical doesn't make you a sustainable industry or a sustainable practice. And the standards should be pushing for true sustainability, using non-toxic chemicals, non-toxic substances. Exactly. They indicate in the standards that they'll be monitoring if a problem is recognized or acknowledged, I believe. I think that's what they said in the standards. But by then it's too late. They should be monitoring in advance of any kinds of problems occurring or situations arising. It shouldn't wait until a problem is recognized or brought to their attention or acknowledged. I find it more egregious, the notion that there can be a rating system for sustainability for an industry that has such a large environmental impact and adverse impact and is contributing to our continued use of fossil fuels and unknown impacts on methane releases. to label it as being rateable for sustainability is greenwashing.